There are some stories in Hollywood that seem tragic not because of a single event, but because a hardship lasts a lifetime. The story of Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen is one of those. The world saw two tiny, perfect twins who became famous almost before they could walk or talk, starring the beloved sitcom Full House, and eventually building a billion-dollar brand. But behind the public image of glamour and success, the twins endured pressures and sacrifices that most people cannot imagine. Born on June 13, 1986, just 2 minutes apart, Mary-Kate and Ashley's lives were altered forever before they even had a chance to experience a normal childhood. By the time they were 6 months old, they were cast in the role of Michelle Tanner, sharing the part due to strict child labor laws in California, a decision that would define their entire childhood. From that moment, their parents, Dave and A. Olsen, became responsible not only for raising their daughters, but also for managing the beginning of what would become an empire. With the twins' ability to stay calm and not cry around strangers, they fit perfectly into the Hollywood mold, and their early talent became both a blessing and a burden. They were constantly moving from auditions to photo shoots, from sets to promotional events, learning the rules of an adult world long before they could even speak fully. By age 3, they were under the management of Robert Thorne, who helped create Dual Star Entertainment, a company built entirely around the twins. The company produced movies, merchandise, books, music, and countless other tie-ins, turning two toddlers into a brand, a phenomenon, and, eventually, the youngest producers in Hollywood history. By the time they were 10, Mary-Kate and Ashley were self-made millionaires. Yet the cost of that success was invisible to the public. Their childhood was defined by work, schedules imposed by adults, and a life shaped by scripts, cameras, and marketing opportunities rather than playgrounds, school events, or birthday parties. Interviews years later revealed how deeply involved the girls were in business decisions long before they fully understood the consequences. Mary-Kate herself would later describe looking at old photos and feeling no connection to them, recalling, "I was a little monkey performer." Their memories were of sets, strangers, and constant pressure, not of the carefree moments that most children take for granted. Full House made them beloved on television, but it also made them commodities, objects in a larger machine that profited from their youth. By the time the show ended in 1995, the world assumed the twins' biggest loss was their famous sitcom, but the real challenges were just beginning behind the cameras. Family tensions, parental divorces, and the continued demands of fame would turn what should have been a joyful transition into adolescence into an intense and difficult struggle that would follow them into adulthood. While Mary-Kate and Ashley were becoming household names, the pressures at home were growing just as intensely as their fame. The Olsen parents, Dave and A, had devoted their lives to managing their daughters' careers, shuttling them from one set to another, from auditions to photo shoots, and try to keep the family together amidst the chaos. But the constant demands of Hollywood were not easy on any family, and by 1996, when the twins were just 9 years old, the strain had reached a breaking point. Dave and they divorced, a development that added a layer of emotional turbulence to the twins' already demanding lives. For Mary-Kate and Ashley, the divorce wasn't just about their parents separating. It was about witnessing the stability of their childhood crumble under public scrutiny while they were still too young to process the depth of what was happening. The timing of the divorce was particularly difficult. Dave quickly remarried a woman named Mackenzie, a relationship that began shortly after the divorce became public. This sudden shift forced the twins to navigate loyalties and emotions that most children do not face until they are well into adolescence, if ever. Ashley chose to stay by her mother's side during the new wedding, while Mary-Kate attended quietly, attempting to maintain peace in a divided household. For two 9-year-olds, these were enormous responsibilities. Yet, despite these personal upheavals, the girls continued their professional obligations without pause. Full House had ended, but their careers were far from over. The girls transitioned into movies, television specials, book deals, and a constant cycle of marketing appearances that demanded more than just their time. It demanded their identities. Every event, every photo, every decision was shaped by adults and by the industry, leaving little room for them to explore who they were as individuals. Even when asked in interviews about their childhood, Mary-Kate and Ashley often insisted that they had a normal life, attending school and social events. But behind the cameras, the reality was very different. The empire built around them consumed nearly all of their time, leaving only fragment of childhood that should have included schoolyard friendships, birthday parties, and carefree play. Their experiences were unusual, isolating, and incredibly intense, creating a foundation for emotional and psychological challenges that would follow them into teenage years and adulthood, while they appeared inseparable to the public, sharing everything from dresses to performances. The truth was that their lives were filled with stress, responsibility, and adult-like expectations that robbed them of the simple joys of childhood. Every decision, every mistake, and every public appearance carried weight, shaping them into people who had to be strong, composed, and professional far beyond their years. And although the world saw two charming, smiling girls on television, few understood the private toll of the industry, the fractured family life, and the weight of being both performers and business people at an age when most children are learning to ride bikes or make friends. These early struggles set the stage for the next chapter of their lives, where fame, adolescence, and invasive public attention would collide in ways that no 9-year-old could ever be prepared for, testing their bond, their identities, and their ability to survive emotionally in a world that had long since treated them as commodities rather than children. As Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen moved into their teenage years, the fame that had followed them since infancy did not diminish. It intensified. In fact, it became sharper, more invasive, and more relentless as the public and media treated every aspect of their growing up process as entertainment. The twins had already spent their childhood performing on sets, attending promotional events, and managing the pressures of Dual Star Entertainment, their own family-run company. But adolescence brought a new level of scrutiny that was far more personal and difficult to navigate. While most teenagers deal with typical challenges like school stress, friendships, and self-identity, the Olsen twins faced a world where every flaw, every mistake, and every moment of vulnerability was captured, reported, and debated publicly. By the early 2000s, their images were everywhere, on magazine covers, posters, DVD boxes, and merchandise shelves. Every appearance, from casual outings to public events, was dissected by fans and critics alike, turning ordinary teenage experiences into a public spectacle. One of the most disturbing examples of this obsession was the creation of countdown websites, run by strangers, that tracked the days until the twins turned 18. These sites celebrated the moment the girls would reach legal adulthood, an alarming invasion of privacy that treated them not as human beings, but as objects for public consumption. In addition to these extreme intrusions, mainstream media often focused on their personal lives in cruel ways. Interviews asked questions that were inappropriate for their age, such as inquiries about Ashley's virginity at 16, leaving her feeling violated and angry. Meanwhile, tabloids published speculative and judgmental stories about Mary-Kate's weight, comparing the sisters against each other and mocking Mary-Kate's struggles with developing an eating disorder. Even respected platforms, like the Oprah Winfrey Show, sometimes asked questions that ignored boundaries, requesting dress sizes and pressing on sensitive topics, as though the girls' private health and bodies were public property. The constant pressure from the media, combined with the long hours of work, the responsibilities of running Dual Star, and the ongoing emotional impact of their fractured family life, created a perfect storm of stress. Mary-Kate's eating disorder, which became a central concern for family and close friends, was a response to this relentless scrutiny. At just 17 years old, she faced a very real threat to her life, with loved ones fearing she might succumb to the disorder if intervention did not occur. Ashley, meanwhile, dealt with the mental and emotional toll in her own way, later describing the experience of seeing her sister suffer while both were trapped in the public eye. The teenage years, which are supposed to be a time of growth, self-discovery, and experimentation, became instead a battlefield of invasion, shame, and relentless attention. Friends, peers, and ordinary support systems were largely absent, replaced by lawyers, managers, and strangers who had a vested interest in the twins' public image rather than their well-being. Every step they took was monitored, every meal commented on, every outfit criticized. Their identities were shaped less by their own choices and more by what the media, fans, and business associates expected of them. The Olsen twins were not just celebrities. They were symbols, commodities, and objects of obsession in a society that had decided their growth into adulthood would be for the entertainment and judgment of the world. It was during these years that the foundation of lifelong challenges was solidified, privacy invaded, personal struggles publicized, and childhood stolen, leaving the twins to navigate an adulthood already scarred by relentless exposure and constant pressure. Even as they attempted to assert their independence, the public's attention remained inescapable, a shadow that would follow them for years to come and influence nearly every decision they made in both personal and professional life. As Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen moved further into their teenage years, the pressures of fame began to take a toll on their physical and mental health. For Mary-Kate, the consequences became painfully visible. The constant scrutiny from tabloids and paparazzi, the unrealistic standards of Hollywood, and the years of relentless work from infancy to adolescence contributed to the development of severe eating disorder. This was not simply a matter of vanity or teenage rebellion. It was a response to decades of living under public judgment, where every appearance was critiqued and every flaw magnified. Reports about Mary-Kate's health circulated for months, with rumors in the media speculating about drugs, weight loss, and lifestyle choices. Strangers and fans felt entitled to comment on her body, turning what should have been private health struggles into a source of public entertainment. Her family recognized the danger before it reached a life-threatening point. Shortly after her high school graduation, an intervention was staged by her father and her therapist. They had witnessed a toll that years of exposure, intense workloads, and media obsession had taken on her, and feared the worst if action was not taken. Mary-Kate entered a treatment facility before she turned 18, a brave step toward reclaiming her health autonomy and sense of self. While she worked on recovery, the public did not slow down. Interviews and appearances continued to press on her personal life, with questions about dress sizes and eating habits thrown in her direction on national television. Even appearances intended to discuss professional projects often devolved into discussions of private trauma, highlighting a pattern in which young celebrities' struggles were exploited rather than treated with care. Meanwhile, Ashley faced her own challenges, albeit in different ways. While she did not battle an eating disorder, she was under constant public scrutiny and had to cope with the emotional strain of seeing her sister suffer, all while managing her own identity under the relentless spotlight. In 2005, she became the target of false claims in the National Enquirer, which implied that she had been involved in a drug scandal connected to her boyfriend. Ashley took the rare step of suing the publication for $40 million, and the outlet ultimately issued a formal apology, acknowledging the story was baseless and misleading. This was a pivotal moment for her, a stand against the constant invasion of privacy, and a rare instance where the sisters were able to push back against the media machine. For both twins, these experiences illustrate a harsh reality. Their teenage years, which for most people are a time to explore identity and learn independence, have been dominated by external forces that strip them of normal development. Their childhood had already been overshadowed by work and industry demands, and now, adolescence brought a heightened form of scrutiny that impacted their health, emotional stability, and personal growth. The interventions, legal battles, and eventual recovery efforts were essential steps in allowing Mary-Kate and Ashley to regain some control over their lives, but the psychological and emotional scars of public obsession linger for years. Even as they entered adulthood, the echoes of media intrusion, tabloid rumors, and the constant judgment of strangers shaped their approach to privacy, relationships, and career decisions, influencing how they interacted with the world and the choices they made in pursuing independence. These health struggles were not isolated incidents, but part of a larger story of exploitation, pressure, and survival, marking a crucial turning point in the twins' lives where the cost of fame became painfully undeniable, and the importance of personal boundaries and self-protection became clear as Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen stepped into adulthood. The world's fascination with their lives did not fade. If anything, it became more invasive and relentless. After decades of being watched as children and teenagers, the twins faced the difficult task of reclaiming control over their own identities, relationships, and personal choices. For most young adults, this period is about learning independence, exploring careers, and establishing friendships and romantic relationships without public interference. For the Olsen twins, it was almost impossible. Every new relationship, every trip, every social interaction was analyzed, photographed, and turned into a headline. Mary-Kate, in particular, faced intense public scrutiny surrounding her personal relationships. While attending New York University in 2004, she dated Stavros Niarchos III, heir to a prominent Greek shipping family. When the relationship ended abruptly, with Niarchos leaving her for socialite Paris Hilton, The breakup was treated as a media spectacle. Tabloids and gossip sites amplified the emotional impact, leaving Mary-Kate overwhelmed and humiliated while the rest of the world consumed her private heartbreak as entertainment. The pressures did not stop there. Even after leaving college, the twins' personal lives continued to be under a microscope. Mary-Kate eventually married French banker Olivier Sarkozy, seeking stability and a quieter adult life. For a while, it seemed as if the twins had finally carved out a safe space away from constant scrutiny. However, the pandemic in 2020 disrupted this fragile stability. Sarkozy reportedly tried to make unilateral decisions regarding their shared living arrangements, leading Mary-Kate to file for divorce during the city's shutdown. The legal process, complicated by the unique circumstances of the pandemic, became another stressful chapter in her adult life, reinforcing the reality that even in adulthood, the challenges of managing personal boundaries and autonomy remained central to her story. Meanwhile, Ashley Olsen also navigated her own battles quietly. She faced health issues, including late-stage Lyme disease, a debilitating condition that left her fatigued and in pain, far from the glamorous public image many expected. In 2016, she underwent a cosmetic procedure that went wrong, causing facial necrosis and requiring oxygen therapy to heal. Yet even these private medical struggles inevitably became fodder for gossip and tabloid speculation. The twins' experiences demonstrated a recurring pattern. Personal milestones, whether joyous or painful, were often overshadowed by public commentary and invasive curiosity. Even moments that should have been celebratory were affected by the constant presence of the media. The death of Bob Saget in 2022, their Full House father figure and lifelong friend, was a particularly poignant example. The twins' public tribute expressed heartfelt sorrow, describing Saget as loving, compassionate, and generous, a father figure who had remained important long after the show ended. Yet even this grief occurred in the glare of public attention, illustrating that their lives, even decades after their childhood fame, remained partially owned by the public eye. In addition to external pressures, the twins also faced quiet tragedy of growing apart from each other emotionally. Where once they were inseparable, dressing alike, performing together, and sharing almost every life experience, their paths as adults became distinct. Ashley focused on motherhood, prioritizing a quiet family life with her husband Louis Eisner and, in 2023, welcoming her first child, Otto. Mary-Kate, meanwhile, continued to navigate the aftermath of her divorce, balancing recovery, personal growth, and the residual trauma of a life lived under the microscope. Sources close to the twins described the separation not as a conflict, but as a natural evolution. Two women shaped by decades of shared experiences, now building lives that reflect their individual priorities and circumstances. Even in adulthood, however, the lessons of their youth remain vivid. Their retreat from public life, avoidance of social media, and refusal to participate in many industry events, including declining to return for Fuller House reboot, were deliberate acts of self-protection, a response to a lifetime in which the world had often felt entitled to their bodies, choices, and private moments. The Olsen twins' adulthood, therefore, was not merely about success or wealth. It was a continuation of a long journey to reclaim privacy, autonomy, and a sense of self that had been largely shaped by forces beyond their control since birth. Their story illustrates the enduring consequences of childhood fame and the ongoing challenge of establishing boundaries in a society that continues to consume personal lives as public spectacle. While Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen worked to reclaim control over their personal lives, they also began building a professional identity that reflected their own choices and vision, separate from Hollywood fame. After decades of growing up under intense public scrutiny and constant media attention, the twins turned their focus to fashion, a field in which they could exercise creativity while maintaining more privacy and control over their work. In 2006, they founded The Row, a luxury fashion brand that emphasized quality, design, and sophistication over celebrity spectacle. The name itself reflected a sense of unity and personal vision. The Row was inspired by Savile Row in London, famous for bespoke tailoring, signaling the twins' serious commitment to craftsmanship and artistry. Unlike the entertainment industry, which had exposed every aspect of their lives to public judgment, fashion offered Mary-Kate and Ashley a space to shape something lasting on their own terms. Over the years, the the role became internationally recognized, earning accolades for minimalist, elegant designs and establishing the twins as serious entrepreneurs rather than merely former child stars. In addition, they launched Elizabeth and James, a contemporary fashion line that appealed to a broader audience, showing that they could create and manage multiple brands while maintaining a distinctive aesthetic. These ventures were not simply business opportunities. They were also a form of reclaiming identity. For the first time in decades, the twins' success was measured not by audience ratings, tabloid headlines, or merchandise sales, but by the quality of their work, their creative vision, and their ability to manage a business that reflected their own values. Their fashion career allowed them to step away from the public eye in ways Hollywood had never permitted. While some former child stars struggled to find meaningful work after early fame, the Olsen twins demonstrated a rare ability to reinvent themselves professionally, creating companies that were respected in the industry and that provided them a sense of independence and security. Importantly, their approach to business reflected lessons learned from years of exploitation and scrutiny. Unlike the entertainment industry, where their childhoods had been shaped by adults and profit-driven decisions, the twins maintained strict control over their brands, ensuring that their creative vision remained central. They avoided unnecessary media exposure, declined interviews when possible, and stayed out of social media, carefully protecting their privacy while letting their work speak for itself. This focus on autonomy also extended to their personal lives. By building careers that were independent of Hollywood fame, Mary-Kate and Ashley could cultivate a sense of self that was distinct from the personas crafted during childhood. Their success in fashion showed that while their early lives had been controlled by industry demands, they were now able to create something enduring, professional, and deeply personal on their own terms. Yet, even in the midst of these achievements, challenges persisted. While they gained control professionally, the emotional scars from decades of fame and public intrusion continue to influence their decisions, relationships, and lifestyle. Their bond, once defined by shared experiences in the public eye, began to shift as they explored individual paths in adulthood. Ashley's focus on motherhood, family life, and privacy contrasted with Mary-Kate's ongoing personal recovery, healing from divorce, and dedication to her business endeavors. These choices reflected both independence and the enduring influence of their shared past. The twins were no longer inseparable performers in a shared public narrative, but two adults navigating parallel lives while remaining deeply connected by love, history, and experience. Their journey into entrepreneurship and creative freedom demonstrates that even after a childhood defined by external pressures, public obsession, and relentless scrutiny, it is possible to reclaim agency, build meaningful work, and establish boundaries that protect both professional and personal well-being. The Olsen twins' success in fashion, therefore, is not just about business. It is about reclaiming identity, asserting control, and proving that life after childhood fame can be defined by choice, creativity, and personal fulfillment rather than public expectation. Even after achieving independence through their fashion careers, Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen experienced another kind of shift in adulthood, one that was more emotional than professional. For decades, the twins had shared nearly everything. They dressed alike, performed together, and even spoke and appeared in ways that emphasized their unity. Their bond was legendary, a symbol of sisterhood shaped not just by love, but also by a lifetime of shared pressures, challenges, and public scrutiny. However, as they moved further into their 30s, it became clear that their paths were diverging, reflecting the natural differences that had always existed beneath the surface, but were often masked by their shared public identity. Ashley focused on building a family life, prioritizing motherhood and domestic stability. In 2020, she married Louis Eisner, and in 2023, she welcomed her first child, Otto. This new chapter brought immense joy, but it also created a natural emotional distance from Mary-Kate, who was still managing the aftermath of her divorce and working on personal healing after years of instability and intense media scrutiny. Sources close to the twins describe Mary-Kate as adjusting to the changes in her sister's life with care, but also privately mourning how different their bond had become. This shift was not the result of conflict or betrayal. It was a natural evolution of two women who had spent decades shaped by shared trauma and now were growing into separate identities. Whereas their childhood and teenage years had demanded that they operate as a unit, adulthood allowed, sometimes forced, them to prioritize their individual needs, goals, and emotional well-being. Mary-Kate's focus was often on personal healing, privacy, and ensuring that her own life was no longer dictated by public obsession or invasive media attention. Ashley's attention was on nurturing her child, family, and domestic life, finding fulfillment in a quieter, more private existence. The distance between them highlights a subtle but important truth. Even the strongest bonds can change when individuals pursue different needs and experiences. While the public may remember the Olsen twins as inseparable figures who always shared everything, their adulthood demonstrates that love and connection do not require constant proximity or identical lifestyles. The emotional drift was also influenced by the decades of trauma they endured together. Growing up in the spotlight, dealing with parental divorce, public scrutiny, eating disorders, and invasive media attention left deep psychological and emotional imprints. These shared experiences shaped their approaches to relationships, communication, and coping mechanisms, and as they matured, they each developed strategies to protect their mental health and personal space. Mary-Kate's retreat from public life, her avoidance of social media, and her careful management of personal relationships reflect a need for control and safety after years of exposure and vulnerability. Ashley's prioritization of family and privacy demonstrates a desire to create a protective, nurturing environment, free from the pressures and invasions that marked her early life. Despite this emotional divergence, the twins remain connected, supporting each other in ways that are less visible but deeply meaningful. Their bond has evolved from a public spectacle of unity to a private, mutual understanding of shared history, love, and care. It is a bond defined not by appearances, performances, or public validation, but by respect for each other's choices, autonomy, and emotional needs. In this way, the Olsen twins exemplify resilience. Even after childhood and adolescent experiences filled with pressure, exploitation, and public intrusion, they are capable of evolving into independent adults who support one another while respecting personal differences. Their story challenges the simplistic narratives often portrayed by media. They are not just former child stars, but women who have navigated complex emotional landscapes, trauma, and life transitions while reclaiming agency over their lives, relationships, and identities. Even as Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen work to build independent lives and careers in adulthood, health challenges and private struggles reminded them of the long shadow cast by years of fame and public pressure. Ashley, in particular, faced physical and emotional hurdles that were largely invisible to the public eye, yet profoundly impacted her daily life. One of the most significant challenges was her battle with late-stage Lyme disease, a debilitating illness that left her exhausted, in pain, and far from the glamorous image that people expected of a former child star. Lyme disease is notoriously difficult to diagnose and manage, and for Ashley, the condition demanded extensive care, rest, and adjustments to her lifestyle. Even in dealing with a serious illness, she faced a lingering weight of media scrutiny. In 2016, Ashley underwent a cosmetic procedure that went wrong, leading to facial necrosis that required oxygen therapy to heal. While medical emergencies are intensely personal, whispers of the incident reached tabloids, turning a private health struggle into fodder for gossip and speculation. The relentless curiosity and judgment of the public created a paradox. Ashley could take necessary steps to protect her health, yet her actions were inevitably scrutinized, commented on, and often misrepresented. Mary-Kate's health challenges, while different in nature, were similarly affected by the twin pressures of past trauma and public observation. Her earlier battles with an eating disorder had already demonstrated how media and public expectations could exacerbate physical and mental health crises. These experiences underscored a harsh reality. For the Olsen twins, adulthood did not offer a complete escape from scrutiny, and personal struggles rarely remained private. Even moments of joy, recovery, or progress were frequently accompanied by fear that someone, somewhere, was watching, judging, or ready to exploit vulnerabilities for public consumption. Beyond individual health, the twins were also confronted with the emotional consequences of growing up in the spotlight. Their bodies, choices, and experiences had long been scrutinized and criticized, leaving them acutely aware of boundaries and the importance of privacy. Years of navigating these pressures made both Mary-Kate and Ashley cautious, intentional, and protective of their lives, particularly in areas that could be misinterpreted or sensationalized. In addition to physical health challenges, the Olsen twins experienced emotional stress connected to family and friendships. The death of Bob Saget in 2022 was particularly poignant. Saget had been a father figure during Full House, a mentor, and a lifelong friend who provided stability and love during their tumultuous upbringing. Losing him was a reminder not only of personal loss, but also the years spent navigating grief and joy under public scrutiny. Their tributes highlighted the depth of their grief, but also the reality that personal emotions were inseparable from public observation. Even mourning could be transformed into headlines. Through these health and emotional challenges, the twins' resilience became evident. They continue to prioritize well-being, family, and private life while managing the pressures of fame that had begun when they were infants. Their ability to recover, seek treatment, and protect themselves